Alright everybody, gather around. Today we'll be talking about episode 3 of Charmed. Roll it. Thank You for Not Morphing was aired on October 21st, 1998. It was directed by Ellen S. Pressman, written by Chris Levinson, Zach Estrin, and Javier Grillo. It has 7.01 million viewers, and it has a IMDb rating of 7.1 out of 10. For today's characters, we have Prue, Piper, Phoebe, Victor, Marshall, Fritz, Cinda, and Leo. And then we have 3 demons, 3 shapeshifters. Let's get right into the story of this episode. So the episode started with the sisters going to a house party across the street. On the way there, they're exiting the house, and we see Prue already telling the sisters, I don't want to go, I have to get up early for work the next day. If you remember in the episode before, Prue got hired at Buckland. So she's telling her sisters that I have to, wake up early. I'm not feeling like going to the party. And her sister's telling her, just show up, be present, be pleasant. We're going to have some fun. And then you can go home and rest and go to work the next day. On their way to their neighbor's house for the house party, we see a big dog with glowing eyes staring at them. It looks a little menacing, I'm not going to lie. But the dog is staring at them, and they go to the house. The party is hosted by 3 young siblings that recently moved into the neighborhood. Their names is Marshall, his brother Fritz, and their sister Cinda. Immediately, when I see Cinda, fishy. She looks very fishy, she looks very weird, she's acting very weird, I don't like her. The sisters go to the party, they start talking, engage with other people. The neighbors are there and they're having a conversation on how slowly the siblings want to renovate the house a little bit. The neighbors are telling the sisters that they want to renovate the house slowly and fix some things up. The sisters tell them that they probably know the house better than they do because they grew up in the neighborhood and with the neighbors, etc. And at that point, one of the brothers asks, oh, how's the bar looking? Meaning because they have, drinks, adult beverages at the party. And the other brother is like, oh, I need to go, fill it up. And Cinda, the sister, is like, it is my turn. And I'm like, okay, Cinda, you ain't gotta do all that. Just go fill up the bar. That's what I'm telling you. Immediately, Cinda, I don't like her. She seems very weird. But anyways, Prue, once again, wants to leave early, telling the sisters, hey, I showed up. Now I'm going to go and get some sleep because I have to work tomorrow. Piper and Phoebe are trying to get her to stay, trying to stall her. Prue turns around and she sees that Andy's there. And we find out that Phoebe called Andy to the party. So Piper and Phoebe kind of walk away, leave him alone, and Andy and Prue are having a conversation. They're talking about things, and Andy asks her if she wants to go to a Warriors game with him on Saturday, and then follow-ups with, but I feel like you're not really gonna be interested in that. And my girl Prue shuts him up real quick because she brings up the fact how the Warriors lost to the Lakers the week before, in the last game. And mind you, I know nothing about sports. I think that's football? ? I don't know. But, they're having that conversation. Prue shuts him up. And at the same time, one of the brothers comes over and interrupts the conversation. Prue introduces Andy. Prue tells the brother, oh, he's a detective. And the brother is like, oh, so I have these parking tickets. And Andy jumps in and is like, oh, mostly do homicide. I'm a detective, do murders and homicide. And that's when Prue finds the opportunity to sneaks and leaves to go back to the manor so she can go to bed. The brother still tells Andy about the parking tickets, even though that's not Andy's, specialty, if you will. So Prue is walking back to the manor. She's walking up the outside stairs, to go up to the door, and she notices that the door is open. The door is a little ajar. Prue just makes a comment thinking that, Phoebe left the door open. And I'm like, girl, y'all left at the same time, y'all left together. We see you exit the house together. Why are you just blaming my girl Phoebe? She probably did not do it. Prue walks in the house, closes the door, starts walking into the little foyer they have, and turns and looks at the staircase that leads to the upstairs, and she sees the big old dog that we saw at the beginning of the episode barking up a storm in the house. So she leaves because she's scared. So then we'll come back with all 3 sisters back in the manor. They're in the kitchen, talking about what happened, and Prue tells them that she found scratches on the attic door. And I'm like, why the dog went up to the attic door to scratch? Very weird. Obviously, Prue tells her sisters that, we should remember to lock the door, and Phoebe's like, it wasn't my fault, etc. And how one of the sisters suggested to buy, like an alarm system. Prue, I believe, says that they don't have, that's too expensive for them to afford, and basically come into a dead end, and they're like, okay, so what are we doing? And Prue's like, unless our vicious, house cat can protect us, we should remember to lock the doors. And Prue goes into the laundry room that they have off the kitchen. Phoebe is like, what a great idea, Prue. Goes, closes the door of the laundry room, and locks it. So Prue now is stuck in the laundry room, which is pretty funny. We're starting to see the dynamic between the sisters and the relationships, right? Because starting from the first episode, that very much Prue did not want Phoebe around, did not like Phoebe. Now we see them cracking jokes and, getting a little closer. The next morning comes, and Prue is at work. A man walks into her office asking for her to appraise a ring that he's wearing. Prue tells him that, hey, probably you should go somewhere else. There's more, they have more experience and stuff like that, or, they can do it. And the man tells her that, oh, you kind of recommend it to me, if you will. Gives her the ring, and Prue is looking at the ring, notices there's 2 stones on it, and grabs a book, and basically she tells the man that she thinks the ring is very old, perhaps 17th century, and is meant for protection. Then, they're chatting about the ring, and then Prue asks him, oh, is this a wedding band? And she really wonders who the man is. So the man basically tells her that you should know who I am, Prudence, which Prudence, it's Prue's full name. She goes by Prue because she doesn't want to use Prudence, but it's her actual name, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. So Prue immediately realizes who the man is. She realizes that the man is their father that has, not been in their life in 20 years. Prue tells Victor, that's his name, he needs to scram and he needs to leave them alone. So Victor invites her and her sisters over to his hotel for dinner that night, and Prue is not interested at all. It reminds him that he abandoned them when they were younger. Victor tries to reason with Prue, and Prue is not listening. She tells him, either you're gonna get out of my office or I will call security to get you out. So the same day, at lunch, Prue is talking to her sisters and basically lets them know that she wants nothing to do with Victor. She's not entertained, she's not happy that he's around, she just wants nothing with him. However, Phoebe and Piper are more open on seeing him. They don't have as many memories as Prue does, which it could be a good or a bad thing because obviously Prue is the oldest, so she has more memories of Victor and especially of him leaving. Where Piper and Phoebe, they were way younger when he left, so they don't remember him as much. Prue tells them that Graham's always warned them about Victor, their dad, and how he was a threat to them, and is suspicious that he showed up now as soon as they found out that they're, witches. Also, we hear from Prue that their mom is dead, so basically he left them, the sisters, right after their mom died, which is very much that's disgusting. Where are you going? Prue tells her sisters that he basically cannot be trusted, right? They cannot trust him. So the conversation kind of ends there, but then we cut to Phoebe. She goes to visit him the same time, still in the morning, afternoon, to his hotel. We see Phoebe walking into the room, and Mr. Victor is getting a massage, and I'm like, okay. She walks in. He's very happy to see her from what it seems, but he confuses her with Piper. And Phoebe's like, oh, it's okay. Everybody confuses me with Piper. And I'm like, sir, that is embarrassing. Probably nobody confuses you with Piper. No. Don't, why are we folding? No, that's embarrassing. That's awkward. He doesn't know who you are because he hasn't been in your life in 20 years. He does make a comment on how he should be, slapped and prosecuted. And I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely. But then he offers her a drink, and I'm like, he also makes a comment, you are over 21, right? And Phoebe's like, barely. And I'm like, sir, is that your idea of connecting with your daughter that you haven't seen in 20 years, asking her for if she wants a drink? Then he's talking to Phoebe, trying to sweet talk her and how she has his eyes, and Phoebe kind of is like, yeah, I can see that. And it is an awkward encounter, but I can only imagine how Phoebe's excited to see him because she was very, very young when he left. Right? So they hug, and as they hug, Phoebe has a vision of him stealing the Book of Shadows. Now, we cut to back at the house, and we see a mailman from USPS. As he goes up to the door, he holds out his finger, and his finger turns into a key. And I'm like, okay, key finger. And he unlocks the door. So he goes into the house. He immediately starts going up the stairs all the way up to the attic. He tries to open the attic door, and he can. So he kicks it. Not just a little kick. Maybe the door comes off the hinges. The door flies into the room. And I'm like, do you pay bills in this damn house? Like, why are you kicking the door? Like, what are we doing? He goes up to the Book of Shadows. He grabs it. He goes downstairs, and he opens the door. He's trying to exit the house, but the book is not able to leave the house. Like, it's kind of like it is protected, and it's meant to stay in the house, if you will. Like, there is a barrier, and the book cannot exit the home. So he's struggling to take the book out of the house, and at the same time, he notices that Prue is coming back. So he goes in the house, closes the door, throws the book across the room, and turns into Andy. So he morphed into Andy. Very weird. So Prue enters the home. He sees Andy inside the house, and he basically questions him, like, hey, like, Andy, what are you doing here? And Andy tells her that, oh, the door was open, so I came in to investigate. Prue is putting her stuff down, and there is a mirror right in front of her when she's putting her purse, whatever, down, and she notices the Book of Shadows from the reflection of the mirror. So she turns around, and she uses her powers to push the book under, like, a table in the living room. They're talking. She tells fake Andy about wanting to go Saturday to the game, and how her dad is back in town that she hasn't seen in 20 years, and at the same time, Cinda knocks on the door, walks in, and basically just says, hey, how y'all doing? In my mind, I'm like, Cinda, what are you doing? You being weird as hell. Like, you are not cute, you ain't cool. Like, why are you in my house knocking, seeing how y'all doing, then leaving? You being mad weird. Like, I don't like you. Cinda leaves. Andy tells Prue that he also needs to head out, gives her a little peck on the cheek, and then leaves. Prue is very much wondering why the Book of Shadows is downstairs, grabs it, starts to go upstairs, and sees that the door is kicked in and it's off its hinges. It's like, that mailman or whoever that is did a lot of damage in the door. Like, baby, the door is not fixable. Like, you have to get a new door. The sisters come back in the house, and they're talking about how weird all of this is, and basically flat out Prue tells them that she suspects their father Victor. They're wondering who would need the book, why they would want the book, and Prue tells them that it's pretty powerful. It's where their magic comes from, right? So there's, like, in the Book of Shadows, all the demons are in there, spells, like, all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty valuable and powerful book, right? But Piper tells Prue, which I'm like, okay, Piper coming in with the knowledge, how their craft is passed down through the female line. So it's not necessarily in the book, but it's through the female ancestors. Phoebe, we kind of know already that she saw Victor, and she did have a premonition about him, but kind of keeps it quiet and tells Prue that if Victor wanted the book, basically he could have done it back like 20 years ago, if you will. But at the same time, I'm like, Phoebe, probably not, because Grams, I'm assuming, obviously knew that there were witches and she was a witch, and she would have not let that happen, right? But basically Phoebe tells Prue that, hey, like, if he wanted the book, he could have it, and he wouldn't wait 20 years later to come and get the book. Piper, again, brings up the point, oh, we should call the police, and Prue tells him that Andy has been in the house to make sure everything is okay, and he will continue to show up. And Phoebe does bring a good point that how Prue never suspects Andy of being maybe the person causing all this, and she keeps suspecting their dad. And, I mean, Prue's kind of like, doesn't really pay attention to the comment, but Prue and Phoebe ultimately have decided to go to dinner with their father. So then we cut to that dinner. Prue, Piper, and Victor are having dinner at the hotel. They're talking about the past. Victor makes points on how last time they were together as a family, Piper only ate food that was white. Okay, that was when she was 4 years old. And Phoebe, that will make Phoebe 1. So now we kind of know the difference between Piper and Phoebe. Like, age-wise, we still don't know, right? So Piper is 3 years older than Phoebe. So this whole scene, it does feel like heartwarming to them, and they share some laughs, and Piper does ask him why he's back here and now. And Victor just gives her an annoying ass answer that I don't care about. He think he's funny, but like he's really not. So back at the manor, Prue is warming in the kitchen in the microwave the biggest container of the greenest broccoli I've ever fucking seen in my life. You know that kitchen smelled like farts, bitch. You know that kitchen smelled nasty. Because why are you warming up all that broccoli for? But that's just my rant. Andy joins Prue at the manor. You know, he kind of stops by, check in on her. And they're having a conversation, and Prue tells Andy how she is very resentful towards her father, and tells him how she cannot believe that he's back and that her sisters went to dinner with him. She does feel pretty heartbroken, or like not necessarily betrayed, but like she doesn't feel right about it. Because again, we know that Prue had the most memories with Victor when he was still around and when he left. And Prue and Phoebe, they were not old enough, so they don't have the same, I guess, not remorse, but like pain. They didn't feel the same pain as Prue did because she was the oldest, right? So she's pretty upset about it because there's so many things that she wants to ask him, especially that she basically wants answers, and it's not okay for him to show up like that out of nowhere after all these years to just try to be a happy family again, right? But Andy convinces her to go join them and ask him all the questions that she has. So Prue goes, we see her entering the restaurant. She goes in pretty hot and starts like ripping Victor to pieces like a new one. I was like, yes girl, tell him how you feel. So basically Prue tells Victor that, well, now since you're rich, how come you never helped us with Graham's funeral, or like help us continue to, you know, keep the house to the family, and like basically like asking him the right questions, right? And again, the sisters kind of excuse him, like, oh, you know, the money is, you know, it happened recently, so it's not like he was always rich. Or like Victor tells Prue that it took so long for him to come back because he did not want to disappoint them. And I'm like, disappoint them? Baby, you already did when you walked out of their life. Like, the disappointment has already happened. So from here, it's only downhill. But again, that's not here nor there. At the same time, we see a waiter bringing around dessert. And this has to be one of the funniest scenes so far for me. Victor trips him and he's falling holding like the dessert. Mind you, that dessert is on fire. And Piper freezes the room. Again, I'm not sure if she did it like intentionally or unintentionally, because I feel like she's still 3 episodes in. She doesn't fully have control of her powers. I mean, none of them fully do, but like Piper, I feel like, is the one that has, if you will, the least control of her powers as of now. Piper freezes him, runs around, grabs the dessert, and then the room unfreezes, and she's like, who wants flambe? I died laughing at the scene every single time I watch it. But after that happens, Victor very much calls the sisters out. So it's like, oh, like, Piper, you freeze objects. Prue, you move things with your mind, you know, telekinesis. And then Phoebe, don't you see the future? Don't you have vision? So literally calls them out, and he's like, oh, let's go back to the manor so we can have a conversation. So back at the manor, we see Piper and Phoebe sitting in the living room reading magazines, and then the mailman from earlier walks in and basically is like, what are y'all doing? Y'all gotta leave because they're coming back. And suddenly Piper and Phoebe morph into Cinda and Marshall, and the mailman turns into Fritz. And I'm like, now wait a damn minute. So we have shapeshifters, and they were the siblings from across the street. I knew the fucking Cinda was not cool. Like, I could tell that she was weird. But basically, they were like, oh, what do you think you're gonna get? And they were like, oh, like, Prue will come back by herself. And then we were, you know, trying to talk to her and get the book out of the house. And basically some buffoonery that, like, would not have worked, right? So the neighbors, turns out they are the shapeshifters, like I already said, who are after the book. Cinda very much wants to kill the charmed ones. Bro, like, don't piss me off. Has to be calmed down by her brother because she's going feral. And I'm like, the brothers literally tell her, like, heal. If you don't grab the newspaper and smack it on her head, like, leave me alone. But they hear the sisters coming back with Victor, so they morph into crows to avoid being seen. So they all walk into the house, and then we see Victor, Phoebe, and Piper kind of like reminiscing. Victor's like walking around showing pictures and talking about the pictures. He was talking about a picnic that they had, a piano recital, and also a picture of them, but like Graham's apparently had cut him out of the picture. Piper mentioned the attack, and like Phoebe wants to talk about them being witches, and all that makes Piper and Prue kind of uncomfortable because Phoebe's very much like, she describes the situation like very detailedly, like, oh, one day I'm Norman, the other day I'm Tabitha, like wham, like magic, like demons, like all that kind of stuff, right? Piper, being Piper, is trying to change the topic a little bit of the conversation, but like Phoebe keeps going, and then Victor, the man that he is, says that he wasn't sure that there will be witches. It was a possibility, but, you know, it turned out to be true. And also, it probably happened when Grams died, which is very interesting that he would know all that, right? And ultimately, Victor asks to see the Book of Shadows. And that makes at least Piper and Prue very suspicious. Phoebe is still the child, and that, you know, she doesn't fully, like, want to see the bad in people, which is not a bad thing, but, like, Prue and Piper, and especially Prue, are very much like, yeah, that's weird. So we come back to this neighbors, and Cinda is like trashing their house. And I'm like, can you take a chill pill? Like, you pissing me off. I don't like you. She's still very angry that they didn't get the chance to kill the sisters, and Marshall has to calm her down. They need to, you know, keep them alive in order to get the book out of the house, because nobody can get the book out of the house other than the sisters. And Fritz wants to kill two of the sisters and then make the third one give them the book out of the house. But Marshall shoots that idea down, and Marshall reminds Fritz and Cinda that they still have to give Victor a chance to get it out of the house. And apparently they're using Victor to steal the book. And I'm like, so Victor is an asshole, and he's working with them. So we'll come back to the sisters and Victor admits that he is after the book because it tends to draw evil, and he basically just wants to protect the sisters, protect his daughters. So throughout the convo, Victor says that, you know, the power of 3 began with the book, within the book too, and it needs to end here. That's why. So Phoebe tells him that it's part of who they are, part of the lineage, part of their family. And Victor basically tells Phoebe that that's what their mom thought before they killed her. And I'm like, oh, so they killed her. Right. He says that while Grams wanted them to discover that they were witches, he was very opposed to it, fearing for their safety, but ultimately, like, kind of like Grams won, but also he left. So Victor blames the grandma, and that, you know, she's the reason why all that happened, but Piper finally jumps in and kind of like goes off on him of like, Grams loved us, she raised us, where were you? Like, a lot of family drama, right? Which Piper is right. So things heat up even more, and Victor tells Prue that, you know, you're not always going to be able to protect your sisters, and people will hurt them. And obviously I'm assuming that kind of like ticks Prue even worse, and that nobody can hurt them more than what he did when he left them. And she uses her powers to kind of like throw Victor across the room. Side note, the way he's looking into that camera when he's being flown off, kind of funny. Because I'm like, why are you staring so intimately into the camera? Doesn't make sense. So Victor, he's like, I can take a hint. You don't want me here, but you could also use your big girl words. You don't have to use your powers. And he leaves, and Piper and Phoebe tell Prue that she didn't have to do all that. Like, that was doing a little too much. Because I'm like, okay, I get it, but like, use your words, say, get the hell out of my house. Like, you didn't necessarily have to throw him across the room. Then again, does he deserve it? We'll find out, but probably. But besides the point. So we're back at the hotel with Victor, and the shapeshifters are there, visiting him and questioning him where he's been. Mind you, we know that they know where he's been, so like that question is kind of redundant, but whatever. So Victor knows that they are like shapeshifters. So that wasn't very clear to me, because I don't know if they knew each other, but you know, they just never told Victor what kind of evil they are, like they are shapeshifters, or it's just confusing, or it's a plot hole. But basically Victor tells them that they know they're shapeshifters, and that they're planning, like, he knows their plan, that they're planning to morph into him, go into the house and grab the book, you know, have the sisters bring the book out. But very much he knows that after, especially tonight, that's not gonna work. So Victor tells him that he has a plan, that, you know, the one person that can still probably trust him is Phoebe, and that, you know, they need him to, you know, kind of talk to Phoebe so Phoebe can bring the book out of the house. And again, this whole time, Cinda is pissing me the fuck off. Because, like, the way she's talking to Victor's like, when he was talking about, like, having their plans, having, like, holes and, like, not being smart. She's like, why? And I'm like, shut the like, I can't stand you. Like, I'm so done with you. Anyways, the next morning comes. Prue and Piper are having breakfast, and then Phoebe walks in, and they're not talking to each other. And Phoebe's like, okay, can we call a truce real quick? So Phoebe admits that she saw Victor, and Piper's like, yeah, I know, I was there. We were at dinner together. But Phoebe is like, no, like, before we have dinner, I went to his hotel, and I had a premonition, or like a vision, of him stealing the book. And basically just tells the sisters that I just didn't want to believe it, that it was true. I just wanted to think that he's back because he wanted to be with us, and he wanted to kind of like become a family again. So Prue comforts her, gives her a hug. They're talking, and Piper finds the protection ring that Victor was wearing left on the table. Prue tells them that she will call the hotel, or, take it to the hotel so they can give it back to him. And then we cut Phoebe going outside to grab the paper, and Victor is there trying to talk to her. And as they're talking, basically Victor tells her that you need to take the book out of the house, danger, like bad people, and he grabs her, and Phoebe has another premonition, but this time is longer than the first one, and we see that the Victor in the premonition that Phoebe had wasn't Victor. It was one of the brothers. Again, I don't know who is who. The only one I know is bitch Cinda. That's the only one. But basically, I believe it's Marshall, because the shapeshifter turns into Marshall, if that's the right one, and walks away with Cinda and Fritz. So after she has a premonition, the brothers walk up to her and is like, hey, like, is you cool? And Phoebe's like, yeah, this is Victor, and kind of runs back inside. Phoebe runs back inside the house and warns Prue and Piper that the neighbors are shapeshifters, and she needs to go upstairs to find a spell in the book because they've been hiding the book. And all of a sudden, or like as it happens, Cinda's there. She had baked cookies, and she brought them for the sisters to try. And I'm like, Cinda, if you don't take your bland ass cookies out of here and somewhere else, I am going to kick you. Minutes later, like seconds later, Fritz walks in, and Marshall into the house, followed by Victor. Actually, I think it's Fritz walks in first, and then Phoebe goes upstairs, looks into the book, but she doesn't know what she's looking for, and then the book starts, like, the pages start, like, flipping on their own, and it takes her to a spell to protect anybody in the home they're in. Side note, if it's a spell that protects them from evil beings in the house, they've never used the spell before, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, because that sounds like a pretty useful spell. Phoebe comes back downstairs, and she finds two Victors. Okay, not just one, but two. She doesn't want to start saying the spell because that would, like, eliminate or hurt or kill anybody that's in the home besides them, to protect them. So both Victors try to convince the sisters that he is the real one. As they're talking, they're saying things like, oh, like, you were always scared of the dark. And the other Victor's like, well, that's a lucky guess. Every kid is scared of the dark. Who isn't scared of the dark? And then one of the Victors like, oh, Prue was never scared of the dark. But ultimately, one of the Victors says the only way to make sure you're really safe is to kill both of us. And then he calls Prue prudent, which kind of makes her like realize that that's her real dad. So she uses her powers to move the ring closer to him, and he puts it on. So they start saying the spell, and the shapeshifter starts shaking and like convulsing, and like along with Victor, and like eventually they melt into a goo of whatever. The ring, we see that actually protected Victor. The sisters run down the stairs, and they share like an emotional hug, and Victor says that he knows that they don't need protecting anymore because they got it. They're cool. Like, they can protect themselves. Side note, CGI when the shapeshifters were melting, pretty funny. Like, it looked pretty weird. The next day, Prue's on the phone with Andy asking for a rain check for Saturday, and tells Andy that Victor, or Dad as she called him, is coming over for, I believe, dinner. Obviously, either Phoebe or Piper points out that, oh, you called him, he's Dad now? They're discussing how all of them are happy for a different reason. So Prue is glad to know that Victor's not actually a monster, and his monster quote-unquote genes were not passed down to them. Phoebe is glad that she now has a realistic image of their father. She knows that he's real, again, with his flaws, but real. And then Piper is glad that they could be a quote-unquote normal family again at, sometimes when Victor is around. So then, new character unlocked. We see a newly hired handyman, Leo Wyatt, entering the scene. So he comes in, and he's holding an envelope, and he's like, oh, this was left at the steps, and he's talking about the house, and one of the sisters makes a comment on how the house kind of has been falling apart, which we don't really see, but, whatever. And very much Phoebe is drooling over Leo and offers him like a tour of the house, but she gets called back by Prue, basically saying that Victor's not coming, he had to leave quickly, and there is a videotape in the envelope. So they play the videotape, and it's like a Christmas Day videotape from when they were young. I'm assuming, obviously, before the mom dies and before he left. They're opening presents. It's a really cute scene. It's very heartwarming to see them like all together, even as kids. And their sisters are all watching it together. The fireplace is on. So it's a nice ending to the episode. So now, let's head over to the analysis portion. So, this episode has a lot. It is, let me just come out and say it, it is not one of my favorite episodes for many different reasons. Let's start with the powers. Phoebe uses her powers twice. She has 2 different premonitions, both about Victor. Piper uses her power once to freeze the waiter with a flambe or whatever that is. And then Prue uses her power 3 times. 1 to push the book under the table, 1 to throw Victor across the room, and then 1 to kind of push the ring towards Victor so he can wear it to protect it. And then there's also a power 3 spell at the end of the episode. Now, this episode is very much focused on family aspects, on the family aspect things. We get a background info on the sisters and their family, and how we, in this episode, find out that their mom is dead, their Gramps is dead, their father was never present. Obviously, we know that the Gramps passed away, closer to the first episode, so they did have a role model, I guess, or, somebody to take care of them growing up. But we also can see the reason why Prue was said that she was more of that mother figure, because apparently their mom passed away when they were very young. And then Gramps had to step in and everything. Again, this episode helped us find out more about what we didn't know about their family structure in general. Obviously, I feel like this episode is important because it does clear up some of the questions we have about their family, but I feel like it's not done in a very organized way. It feels a little messy. It feels like it clears some questions up, but it creates and leaves some questions that we didn't have before, if that makes sense. I guess one of the things that is really important to see is the reason why Prue she had so much regret towards her father when he left. But overall, I feel like this episode is decent because it gives us some background information, even though it's not done in a very organized way. I feel like this is not my favorite episode, if you will. Again, there are some issues. One of the main things that I would like to point out is, I don't know if you have noticed it, but when they're watching that videotape at the end of the episode, the actress that plays the mom is Alyssa Milano, that also plays Phoebe, and I'm like, y'all couldn't find a different actress? But she plays Patty, or, that's the mom's name, Patty. We'll find that out in later episodes. I feel like, again, it is a decent episode because, again, we have more, dynamic development, more character builds. We get a scene that Prue and Phoebe, hug and embrace, and Prue is supporting Phoebe, which we only 3 episodes in, but, the first episode does a good job on showing, the rough dynamic between Prue and Phoebe, and this feels okay, we're on the road for redemption, and the sisters will start to get closer. Another thing that I'd like to point out, because again, I have the knowledge of future seasons and episodes, Victor is very different in this episode. Portrayed very different in this episode than later episodes, right? Obviously, not only that, but the actor that will play Victor in the future is a different actor. I like both of them because they bring different characteristics into Victor. But aside from that, in this episode, Victor, it is very much more like morally ambiguous, coming off as something of like a shady con man and so disconnected from his daughters that, like we kind of talked about earlier, he mistakes Phoebe for Piper, which kind of shows a disconnect. However, underneath all this, he still like cares about his daughters and wants to protect them. So like, even though he seems like, a weird man, like especially working with the demons, he still has an underlying like, oh, I'm doing all this to protect my daughters. I don't want them to be witches. I want them to be safe and be able to live a normal life. Also, on the credits, he is credited as Victor Halliwell, which raises other questions of, is Halliwell like his name that the mom took? But at the same time, like in later episodes, we find like how the Halliwell like line is the magical line. Maybe he took the mom's name. But in later seasons, he's called Victor Bennett, and that's his actual name. And then the mom just kept her family name because it is a magical family name. And last thing is, this is also the first time that we see the Book of Shadows being able to protect itself from evil. Again, in later seasons, it looks different. Evil basically cannot touch the Book of Shadows. But in this first episode, we see that the book can be touched by evil but cannot exit the manor, because I'm assuming it's a source of its protection. So if I had to rate this episode, I would probably give it like a 5 out of 10. Again, it is not my favorite episode. Pacing is kind of weird. The story idea is good. I just feel like it was not executed the right way, if that makes sense. Not by all means, it's not a bad episode. There's worse episodes. Not worse. I don't want to say worse, because that's my favorite show. Like, I don't think any episode is bad. It's just episodes that are better than others. So, again, not my favorite episode. I like how it builds that backstory of the family dynamic and structure, but it could have been done in, if you will, in a better way. So, that was my take on the 3rd episode of Charmed. Please, please, please drop your thoughts, comments, concerns, and outrage in the comments down below. If you want more movie and TV show reviews, please subscribe to the Rewatch Party. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everyone.